Good morning to all of you. It was excellent being able to hear the opening remarks this morning by His Royal Highness Sultan Nazrin Shah. He ticked many of the boxes as far as this particular plenary session is concerned. So this panel will amplify many of the points which were made by him this morning. But let me just go back a bit to yesterday to add a bit more perspective. As we heard yesterday, the issue of maintaining social cohesion in diverse multicultural societies remains an important challenge that governments and civil societies worldwide must face. Yesterday, we talked about how to think about what social cohesion in multicultural societies looks like. And in fact, yesterday, our president, Taman, he talked about how social cohesion, in many surveys, appears to be weakening around the world. So this is a very telling challenge. So today, this morning, we go a step further by asking another key question. What are the major challenges to social cohesion in multicultural societies, both now and in the future going forward? Are these challenges ideological? Are they identity-based? Are they socioeconomic? Are they technologically driven? These are core uncertainties and challenges that certainly need navigating, and hence the topic of our session this morning, navigating uncertainty. To help us in the process of navigating such uncertainty, we are very pleased, as mentioned, to have with us three distinguished speakers with very relevant, diverse backgrounds. Of course, because of time, we don't want to go into great detail on their backgrounds. You already have heard the introductions. In any case, more details are found in your ICCS materials. But let me just broadly summarize the sense of the experience each particular person brings to the panel this morning. Mr. Peter Ho, as mentioned, has been is no stranger in Singapore policy circles. He spent more than 34 years in Singapore government, holding many senior government positions. Currently, he's a board member of RSIS, as well as senior advisor to the Center for Strategic Futures and a senior fellow of the Civil Service College. So, Mr. Peter Ho is well placed to talk about how governments could help us navigate uncertainty, the view, if you like, from a government perspective. Also, after him, we would have very pleased to have Mr. Ahmed Aboutaleb, as mentioned, former mayor of Rotterdam, served between 2004 and 2007. And Mr. Aboutaleb actually earned a very well-deserved reputation as someone who deeply understood the complexities of Dutch society and was able to bring together and promote dialogue between different communities. So what I suppose we can expect from Mr. Aboutaleb is what can the community do? What can the community do to help us navigate uncertainty? Last but not least, we have Mr. Fadi Chehade online, who, as mentioned, is founder of Ethos Capital in the US, and he is an internet entrepreneur who has had a long career founding, growing, and selling many information services companies. So from his perspective, it would be interesting to know what can the private sector do in helping us navigate uncertainty. So as you can guess from my very, very brief survey of the backgrounds of our speakers, each brings a very unique and perspective, extensive perspective, but unique perspectives to this panel. So we certainly look forward to their remarks. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 15 minutes to speak so that later we can have some discussion, after which I will moderate the session. As mentioned, please use Pigeonhole for your questions. With that preamble, may I invite Mr. Peter Ho to speak, give his remarks first. Thank you very much. Peter.
Thank you, Kumar. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First, a disclaimer. I cannot speak for the government because I have been retired for more than 15 years. So all the opinions here are my own views and based on perhaps the perceptions of a somewhat detached observer who has had some experience in government in the distant past. I'd first like to thank His Royal Highness Sultan Nasrin Shah for setting the stage, and in particular, in highlighting the role of technology, which is, I believe, a major driver of social change in the world today. And it's not just the impact on modern societies, but also, obviously, on multicultural societies. Indeed, Sultan Nasrin Shah referred to the digital transformation of societies. Today, people increasingly depend on the social media to communicate with other people. They even depend on the social media to understand the world that they live in, instead of reading newspapers or watching the news on television. But the social media is a recent phenomenon. It really only exploded on the scene about 20 years ago with the advent of platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Today, about 5 billion people are thought to be using the social media, or as much as 60% of the world's population, access that has been fueled by the availability of smartphones, which are getting smarter at the rate of Moore's law. Ironically, an exploding social media world increases connectivity on the one hand, but also splits societies on the other. Some consequences are already evident. The social media has dramatically weakened the ability of governments to control or regulate information flows. Misinformation and disinformation are outpacing the ability of the state to correct them and to control their impact. To illustrate this problem, we can look at an incident of the mass stabbings of young girls at a dance studio in Southport, UK, in July last year, which Sultan Nasrin Shah referred to in his remarks. Now let's look at some of the details that emerged from this tragic incident. Far-right Telegram channels and influencers falsely claimed that the suspect was a Muslim migrant. These speculative posts generated over 27 million social media impressions within 24 hours. And despite the police clarifying that the attacker was born in the UK and was a Christian, they were drowned out by the online hate speech. And this led to attacks on targets associated with Islam, including a local mosque in Southport. This misinformation or disinformation then migrated from niche Telegram channels to TikTok, a mass social media platform. And this led to spontaneous riots in 27 towns in the UK, including firebombing attempts on migrant hotels. A neo-Nazi in Finland even shared online instructions with UK rioters on how to commit arson, how to avoid the police, and encouraged the targeting of Jews and Muslims. This was a case of transnational interference. The UK's Online Safety Act was criticized for its perceived inability to deal with the rapid dissemination of such information. It was seen to have failed to compel platforms like Telegram and X to remove incendiary content swiftly. Indeed, posts inciting violence remained online for days. This incident highlights jurisdictional limitations in regulating social media platforms that have a global reach. Arguably, the escalation of online communication with the escalation of online communication, governments are no longer the sole or even primary gatekeepers of information, or misinformation or disinformation, as the case may be. And this has contributed to declining trust in public institutions and traditional media, resulting in a turn to alternatives. Since 2017, the Edelman Trust Barometer has been reporting trust in crisis around the world, in governments, the media, business, and the NGOs. Indeed, exposure to alternative information sources have increased people's skepticism of mainstream interpretation of events and facts. The turmoil that followed South Korea's short-lived martial law in 2024 revealed a disturbing construction of alternative realities by far-right supporters and amplified by conspiracy theorists through the social media. YouTube, Telegram, and X were flooded with content claiming that the military was executing traitors and that North Korean agents were disguised as protesters. Unlike the mainstream view of the events as a constitutional crisis, the far right and their supporters saw it as a deep state coup attempt and that martial law was justified. The result was, in South Korea, fragmentation, exacerbating the turmoil and the sense of distrust. As this year's Edelman Trust Barometer said, we are seeing a profound shift to acceptance of aggressive action with political polarization and deepening fears, giving rise to a widespread sense of grievance. Technological developments are also reshaping how imagined communities are formed, which are less tied to geography or ethnicity and more shaped by shared digital experiences, platforms, and data interactions. These inevitably raise questions over whether the concept of the nation-state and communities built on common culture and history are being weakened. Today, the global K-pop community of fans, such as BTS Army, spans continents, races, and languages. The fans feel a deep collective identity reinforced through coordinated hashtag campaigns, live stream events, and fan translations. In 2020, K-pop fans and TikTok users coordinated to flood Trump rally registrations in Tulsa with fake RSVPs, creating an illusion of massive interest. In the realm of gaming, immersive digital spaces enabled by technology allow people to live out identities and affiliations that do not exist offline. Entire social ecosystems have formed in completely virtual worlds, such as Roblox, Fortnite, and Decentraland, often around shared missions and events. But while these communities are largely formed as a result of online interactions, they have an impact on the offline or the real world. Fortnite dances like flossing and slang like cracked, which for the uninformed means really skilled, have spread into mainstream pop culture and even to everyday speech. Some young people now appear to relate more to their online communities than to their physical social circles. For them, their online communities play a bigger role in shaping their identities, attitudes, and behaviors than their offline communities. It is not difficult to imagine how such technologies can stress multicultural societies more than homogeneous ones. Indeed, the few examples I've chosen show how difficult it is for the state to control technology because it is evolving faster than governments can make policies. Sultan Nasruddin Shah referred to the digital destruction age. Digital platforms and the social media now provide ways for people to deliberately, sometimes unconsciously, circumvent government controls. But the train has already left the station. The challenge for governments is to learn what they can control, what they must control, and what they cannot. They will have to accept that the regulation of technology that is changing fast and impacting society in tandem may depend as much on the private and people sectors to better manage, or at least to manage together. It will otherwise be a fool's errand to think governments can do it alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ho. I'd like to invite Mr. Aboutaleb to give his remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you very much. It remains a complicated name, Ahmed Aboutaleb, in Dutch to be a Dutch citizen and a mayor, although the name don't sound really Dutch. People from the Middle East know that Aboutaleb has another meaning than, for instance, Mr. Johnson. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Last year, I had the honor in October to be present here in Singapore to speak on the conference of the ECOS, elaborating on the issues of uplifting communities. And yesterday, I was witnessing a lot of theoretical contributions during this conference about social cohesion, the concept, what it is. And today, I would like to share with you in my contribution how I, during a period of almost 16 years, worked in the neighborhoods of the city of Rotterdam about the issues of social cohesion and how I did it in practice. Why? I learned when I was civil servant in the 90s, working as a spokesperson to a minister, how the devastating war in Yugoslavia, based on issues of ethnicity and religious background, led to one of the most bloody wars in Europe, a place where after the Second World War we said, never a war again. Thousands of children, women have been separated from the man and have been killed. That war led to creating 4 new countries in Europe. So I traveled upon request of the government of the Netherlands to Bosnia to help to recruit refugees to come to the Netherlands. Can you imagine that a delegation is going to a war zone, bringing refugees, and nowadays we say no refugees at all? There is a major change in the perception in Europe since that war. So I learned how important it is when I become myself in office, I have been also in the national government, how important it is to bring people together to avoid this type of conflicts. So what I did, I wrote a document myself named the We Community. And that is another approach in the country that is based on liberal principles, I. So I would like to move towards we instead of I, because in my perception, I is nothing. If you are alone on this world, just alone, you will die within 2 weeks if there is no social environment behind you. And in my city of Rotterdam, a port city, a major port in Europe, one of the larger ports in the world, we have people from all over the world, 185 nationalities. 185. So I consider myself not only the mayor of Rotterdam, but also a Secretary General of the United States of Rotterdam. You leave the city hall, you have the world. You smell the kitchens of all the world. You hear the languages from all the world. And I contributed myself by speaking 4 languages. And as the idea of diversity is a big force to the city, I wanted to invest in a program that we designed especially to work in 6 neighborhoods with the highest numbers of diversity. And I decided myself to leave the city hall. And if you look on Google, City Hall of the City of Rotterdam, it is a palace. So I decided to leave the city hall and get in an office in one of the most deprived areas of the city, Carnice. It's a famous name nowadays. A small office working with the city officials and the citizens. So what we did, we had no consultants, no expensive reports. We did things instinctively. Every Friday, I walked on the streets of the neighborhood, knock on the doors, and talk to people, and people behind me took notes. We organized dinners, the cheapest policy instrument at dinner, and a cup of coffee. So we bring people like this gathering together. People living in the same street on number 13, and the others live in number 15, have no idea who the neighbors are. But bringing a meal, people eat together and have an idea to talk with each other. And the most common issues were safety, security, housing, livable environments, how clean are the streets, things like that. We so organized topics, and I said to the citizens, if our conclusions are 8 during a dinner, 4 are for me, and the other 4 are for you. I would like you to contribute, to do the work yourself in your own neighborhood. I remember a day that people would like to green their own streets. So I decided to close the street on a Saturday to bring the plants, to bring the sand and the soil and the water, and the people did the work. Someone is preparing sandwiches, the other one is preparing coffee, the other one is preparing tea, and the street is closed. The mayors come in the morning to start the work and comes at the end of the day to see the results. Can you imagine what it means for such a street where people are now collaborating together to have the idea to speak about the kids and education and other things? But we did also big things like providing more education for kids in the primary schools. 10 hours more education a week. Again, 10 hours more education a week. Language and math, more above the national curriculum every week. That is an investment of 40 million euros on the level of the city. We decided to demolish old houses to build new ones, to build larger ones for families, to create more space for green and trees and parks. The citizens may design the park. They may make a choice what type of trees and plants will be in the park. They do that collectively, the we approach. We built also a higher level of education centers, a gymnasium instead only centers to train people to have a good job. Because we think that these people, 260,000, have also the talents to get a higher level of education. If you believe in diversity, you believe also in talent of these people. I never forget a man from Iraq came to the Netherlands as a refugee, and he started as a cleaner. If you are a foreigner, if you are a refugee, if you are an immigrant, all things you learned in the country of origin are zero. You start from scratch. And then on a day, we observed the guy playing the piano and getting Chopin out of the piano. And then suddenly someone asked the guy, "What did you do in Iraq?" He said, "I finished the conservatorium." But in the Netherlands, he started as a cleaner. Nobody was interested in his talents. So we did this program over 15 years, which I was mayor, but we decided that we put the finances for this program aside for 20 years. with collaboration with the Dutch government, the province, but also the city of Rotterdam. It's more than a political approach, because these citizens were not able to vote for me. I was appointed by His Majesty, so I was not a political figure at all. I was more a kind of a father of the city dealing with these complicated issues. And we asked the University of Rotterdam, the Erasmus University, a well-known university for its economy and also for the medical faculty. We asked them to, parallel to this employment, to this execution of this program, to see whether indeed our investments are rewarding. Because that's what we want to know. Are these investments rewarding? Otherwise, it remains a concept. And indeed, we see over the years, one of the most hard statistical number is the level of education of the kids. We see that the level is growing towards the goal, which is the average of the city. And that's working. We see that the number of kids with migrant background moving towards the university and higher level of education is growing indeed. The program is rewarding. The number of people living from social benefits is going down, and the number of people with jobs is growing. That's fascinating. The number of the elderly participating in social work is also growing, but it's vulnerable. We have to keep this type of work and this type of investments going, and the political involvement should be better. I think myself, these citizens that I've been working with and have been knocking on the door, they will never visit me at the palace, which is the city hall. I have to go to them to talk with them at their own level. The city hall is too far away. It's a palace. It's nothing for them. The blue-collar jobs they do never give them access to the city hall. That is for lobbyists, for big employers, for Shell and for all the others. They knock on my door every day. But these citizens were not there. And I think it's really important to reverse our concept of working with citizens when we really would like to realize change. And to me, it's really important also to make the right choices. The budgets are always limited. So if I have an immigrant with Turkish roots who is 60, for instance, with low education and is living on social benefits, and I have 100 euros to spend, do I spend that to support this guy to do more groceries, or to spend the 100 euro for his daughter, for better education, to prevent another wave of people getting into social benefits? Complicated choices, but we have to do that. And I think instead of talking only about the concepts of cohesion, it's really important to move towards doing it. And if you do that, how do you do that? It's easy to talk about exclusion on social media and all the other things, and I know how it works. I mean, the day that I refused, upon request of the Prime Minister, to raise the flag of Israel above the city hall, the whole far-right parties gave me a punch. I know how it works. I was victim myself of this type of social media. Fortunately, my social and political ground is solid. They couldn't shake me from my position. I'm still there, and the trust between the city and I is still as high as it was. So the attacks from the right, the moment you say or you do things they don't like, they will punish you. We know that. So it also requires political courage to stand and to say the right things, and also to elaborate with citizens. I mean, the relation between me and the citizens over 15 years made that the far-right parties never can do any harm to me, even if they mobilize the highest powers they have in politics. So take stand, work on it, bring people together, and the magic is a hot meal and a cup of coffee, not a consultant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mr. Aboutaleb, for that very rich and practical analysis and sharing of all the excellent ground level initiatives at the community level to promote social cohesion. It's very practical, thank you. Right now I'd like to invite Mr. Fadi, who's online, to share his views from the private sector perspective. Please.
Thank you, Professor Kumar, and wonderful to be following Dr. Ho and Mr. Aboutaleb with their very passionate sharing of their experiences, which I very much learned from, so thank you both. And thank you all of you for indulging me to join you today from Milano in Western Europe, where I happen to be, and I apologize for not being with you. I would have loved to be in Singapore, one of the cities I've enjoyed many, many times and love. My perspective on this very important topic comes from my digital experience, both in the private sector as well as in the public sector. I have studied artificial intelligence in the 1980s. My professor was John McCarthy, who invented the word artificial intelligence. And at the time, people thought I was studying a subject because I lacked natural intelligence, which I still do. But AI was not known at the time. And I spent many years since then in the digital space building digital companies. But personally, not professionally, I come from a background of many cultures. And therefore, multiculturalism in the digital space was something quite important and featured in a lot of the work I did. My father was from Egypt. My mother was from a mixed race, but I grew up in Alexandria, Egypt. Alexandria is, of course, the first cosmopolitan city in the last 2,000 years, where many people from different parts of the world lived together. I grew up in East Asia and Lebanon, but also in Europe and in the United States. And I hold multiple citizenships, like Mr. Aboutaleb. I have many tongues. My first language was French. And therefore, multiculturalism is very much a part of who I am. And when you come to the digital world, I came to the governance of the digital world when I was asked to and selected to run ICANN in 2012. And I just need to explain to you the importance of this moment. The digital world, if you ask yourself, who governs the digital world? And that's a very important question because it's actually not clear to most people how the digital world is built and who runs what parts of it and who decides how it either contributes or, as we heard from His Highness, it could sometimes also steal from our multicultural societies. But the digital world has three layers. The physical layer, which is the networks, that is well managed by many of the governance institutions around the world. The logical layer of the internet, which is the least understood part of the digital space, that's where, frankly, the digital space comes together. So even though the internet today is made up of roughly 78, 79,000 networks, it still is called the one internet because of this logical layer. And that logical layer is critical to create a single digital space for the planet. ICANN, the institution I was running for a number of years, is the governance arm for that logical part of the internet, and therefore very critical. It manages the root zone of the entire global internet. And then on top of that, the third layer is really where we all live, the applications of the internet, the social media, email, the web, all of these are applications on top of the internet. And that is today, the governance of that layer is entirely segmented. It's all over the place. I was brought into ICANN because this institution that governs the middle of the internet, the middle of the digital space, was largely, frankly, controlled by people from the United States, from people from a common culture. And I was asked to bring my multilingual background, my understanding of different cultures, to globalize this institution. And between 2012 and 2013, joined by many people, in fact, from Singapore as well, like Asha Himrajani, who invited me to be with you today, we globalized ICANN. It had only representation from 30-odd governments. When we left, it had representation from over 150 governments. When I joined, it was headquartered to run the global logical infrastructure of the whole digital world in the US and Sydney and London and a few Western, very centric Western cities. We moved it to be active in 35 countries in the world, and I globalized the staff from 90 plus people to 500 people from all the cultures of the world. So this was a very important activity. We also introduced for the first time top-level domains on the internet that were written in a script other than the Latin ASCII script. So people could type an entire domain name in Arabic or in Cyrillic or in Chinese, which wasn't possible before. Those are the activities we did to make the digital space more open and to embrace all languages and cultures. Now, Professor Kumar asked me to think a little bit about the future. Where do we go from here? Because the realities of today's digital space and how it will remain or frankly regress into secret walled gardens is very dangerous. It's a very critical moment. AI is making that moment very, very important. So let me just touch on this. First of all, the digital space is all space. The old idea that there is cyberspace and the real world. Frankly, as Dr. Ho was saying, there's no separation anymore. Everything is digital. Every aspect of our society, of our economy is now digital. It's been digitized. And in fact, as an AI student of AI and a practitioner of AI and a user of AI, I can tell you that within the next 5 years, we may have 10 billion humans, but we will have at least 100 billion AI agents amongst us, talking to each other, talking to us. The world will become hybrid. The idea that there will be a human world and a digital world will even go away. There will be a hybrid world. And the rules for how a hybrid world will be run, who will control these agents that will be part of decision-making. Your insurance agent will talk to the agent of your insurance company, and they will negotiate things, and they may make decisions. This is the new field called agentic AI, where the agents are actually acting on your behalf. And how will you have agency over your agents or the agents of others? Those are very real issues. That's the world we're getting into that is coming. And I don't think any of us or any government or any one institution has the power to slow down the hybrid world we're about to get into. As a practitioner of digital governance, I will tell you that there are 3 things I'm concerned with. The first is how are we going to govern this hybrid world and who will govern it? The second is how will the content in this hybrid world be understood, tracked, and managed? And the third, which is maybe the most relevant for our conference, is how will the cultural norms be set in that hybrid world? Because cultural norms can be either erased, which I'm concerned with because of the high centralization in the digital space, or they can be amplified depending on how we approach that new hybrid world. So let me touch on governance quickly. Governance, many of us don't fully appreciate, as I said much earlier when I described my role on ICANN, how the digital world is governed. It is therefore important that governments, private sector, civil society understand how the internet has been governed to date, how did we make sure that the logical infrastructure is global and embraces all cultures and languages, and how do we continue doing this in the AI space? There are no institutions at the moment in that top layer that I mentioned to you before. There are no governance mechanisms that exist. There's massive fragmentation. And when there is massive fragmentation, the most powerful rule. And therefore, some platforms today have enormous power on the governance of the rules. We saw what happened when an individual acquired a major social platform. I will leave the names out of all of this, but when an individual with enormous power acquires a social platform that billions of people use, that person has enormous power, unfettered, uncontrolled, and very difficult to control because, as Dr. Ho said, this is a very transnational space. It is not a national or even international space. When I was advising Secretary General Guterres on these matters, it became clear that not even the United Nations, which is essentially the nations of the world coming together, has itself the power, nor do the nations under it have all the power they need to control a private sector player. So governance is a major issue, and we lack today the institutions at the transnational level to replicate what we did in layer 1 and layer 2 to this top layer. Content. There are 3 things I'll mention quickly on content. Who is training our AI models? Mostly people from one cultural background. It is therefore imperative we, as a multicultural society, understand and contribute to the training of AI models. Otherwise, these AI models and all the agents they produce, the billions of agents they'll produce, will not have the multicultural DNA in them. The second is hyper-personalization of digital content. There is now a massive movement because of the advent of AI on the internet to hyper-personalize what each of you sees when you touch the digital world. That was not possible before. Before, we targeted cohorts or groups of people. Now, the digital content can be hyper-personalized for you. So for those of us who are worried that the digital world made us into small groupings that are isolated, it will now attempt to isolate each of us individually by targeting content for you based on who you are and the persona that the digital world has of you. And finally, I'll touch on cultural norms. This is the third of my 3 areas of focus. Cultural norms, when I was the head of ICANN and a government or an institution approached me and said, you are in a position of authority, why don't you stop pornography or child pornography? Well, we did. We worked very hard on things like child pornography. Why? Because all of us in this room, and probably all 7 billion people, would agree that child pornography is a bad thing. And so because there's common agreement, we were able to target child pornography on the internet and stop a lot of it before it became prevalent or reach a lot of our children. But that's not the case for other things like privacy, consumerism, hate speech, free speech. Where does free speech begin and end depend on your culture, on your society, on your laws. And therefore, I was never able to participate in creating any cultural norms at that level. So I will finish this cultural issue by saying, by giving you the solution that I believe will work, which is the concept of cultural subsidiarity. Cultural subsidiarity is the legal term to say that you move the decision-making to the smallest point of competent authority, as opposed to the highest level of competent authority. And the cultural norms that will retain multiculturalism depend on each community. And we need to keep the rules for how the digital world deals with culture at the most subsidiary level. For that to happen, the platforms that control the digital world, such as Meta and Amazon and Google need to agree to the concept of cultural subsidiarity. They need to let communities decide what is acceptable in each of their areas. I will close my 15 minutes because I think Professor Kumar was very specific correctly about that, so we allow time for Q&A. By just giving you an image that was very important to me as someone whose ancestry comes from Egypt. If you've been to a desert, you know that the deserts are usually dotted by one of two structures, either fortresses that protect some group or community, or oases, which are natural open spaces. So I want to ask you, is the multicultural world safer if we all create fortresses or if we create oases? Will we grow to have protective spaces that protect our culture? Or will we grow to have open, welcoming oases without walls that have rules, though? Oases survived because there were rules. When you came to an oasis, you did not use all the water. You shared. You understood how to work with others. I hope that the digital world will contribute to the blossoming of many digital oases, and I look forward to questions and discussions with all of you. Back to you, Professor Kumar.
Thank you very much. Fadi, I would like to thank all our speakers for sticking to time. We've had, well, quite a number of questions, but I think it's possible to cluster them. I mean, a significant number of the questions essentially deal with the issue of how do we actually regulate the digital space in terms of preventing disinformation, misinformation. Is it possible to be able to regulate social media space in a way that controls the levels of disinformation in society, but without infringing freedom of speech? So I think this is something which I think Mr. Fadi might be interested to address, and perhaps also other speakers here. Mr. Ho has had perhaps something to say from in line with his comments on what governments can do, what are the limits of what governments can do, and perhaps Mr. Aboutaleb as well from his perspective. Perhaps we want to try to sort of address this group of questions first. Who would like to go first?
Shall I go?
Yes.
Well, I don't think that that will be possible ever to control internet and everything on internet. So I should say, don't try it. But I agree with our speaker from Milano that if regulations are needed, do that on the lowest level. And that's the way you can take into consideration the local culture. So that's really important. In the Netherlands, we say freedom of speech is not absolute. There are limits to freedom of speech, but what are the limits? Nobody can tell you what are the limits. We say freedom of speech is there accordingly to your own responsibility for the law. So freedom of speech according to your own responsibility for the law. You may say everything on the internet and other publications, but if somebody is feeling offended, his religion has been offended, his person has been offended, he may go to court, and it's to the judge to judge. We say in the Constitution, all the freedoms are equal. Freedom of religion, freedom of political party, freedom of having a union, all the freedoms to organize your own educational system, all the freedoms are equal, and only the judge may have a preference whether in a certain circumstances the thing you have been saying is considered to be offending someone. So we put a judge in the highest position to take a position if needed. And we can work with this. I was responsible for the right for demonstration. In the Netherlands, the mayor is the highest authority for the police. I was a police chief, and I was also responsible for organizing demonstrations, whether pro or cons. And the law says the mayor shall not be having an opinion about the subject of demonstration. So whether it's a right group or left group or whatever, I will never have an opinion about the demonstration based on the content of the demonstration. That should be, my role is giving the city, the space, the streets for the people to demonstrate, whether 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, except if they cause damage to the city, or if they cause the damage to the public good, or they are causing threat for the public health. 3 reasons in the law given to the mayor to prohibit, but never say, well, you are pro this and you are contra this. I am from this political color, I allow this and I deny the other. So all the freedoms are equally, and it's up to the mayor to take a position, and up to the judge to take a position, and the mayor is neutral in organizing all types of gatherings, allowing public speech for everyone equally.
Thank you. Mr. Ho?
I think we have to think about regulation of technology as part of a larger social construct. And that social construct has to be a consensus that society as a whole has to reach between the people, the private sector, which is obviously got its own interest in developing and advancing technology, plus the government, which of course has to look at a lot of and juggle a lot of complex outcomes. And that social construct begins with asking questions like, what do we want from technology? Is technology there just for the economy? Is technology there to build a cohesive society? Is technology there to advance communications? These are basic questions which do have to be asked, and these can only be settled through a kind of social discourse. If you don't ask these questions, then the default is to say, well, this is bad or this is good, and we'll regulate this and we'll let other things pass. So I'm of the view that when we deal with emerging technologies, we do have to start off with a conversation as to what we expect from the conversations, and there are no simple answers. The worst, I think, is for governments or politicians to claim that they have the answers to very complex problems such as technology. Anybody who claims that, I think we should question whether he understands what the issues are. So I think we do have to start off with a conversation, and it will take more than a short panel discussion to find out what the answers are. But it does require society as a whole to come together to talk about these issues. The problem, of course, with technology is it's changing extremely fast. So you need to be very nimble and you need to be very quick on your feet to establish these conversations. By the time you organize things, you take your time, things already have changed, and by then it's already too late. And I suspect with things like AI, artificial intelligence, perhaps it's a bit late already. And we just have to learn to find ways to live with it, rather than to believe that we can truly organize things so that it doesn't outpace our ability to get what we want out of it.
Nowadays, technology is becoming a geopolitical issue in Europe. All the government institutions are storing the data on databases in the US, the clouds. And we have learned in last months that it is possible for the US government to intervene in the clouds. That's the way the International Court in The Hague has been cut from its email and all the other data storage on the clouds in the US. It's not possible now for the International Court in The Hague to work due to all the data is stored on the cloud in the US, which they cannot reach. The US has been blocking that. That is an alarming signal for the world, but it's also an alarming signal for Europe. And Europe is now saying we have to build our own cloud system in Europe. And we're going to do it. There will be a major effort for 10, 15, 20 years, but we're going to do it. The other one is the way we use credit cards. All these credit cards are connected one way or another to payment systems in the US. That's critical. The European Bank in Germany is now thinking about establishing paying systems in Europe to become less independent or not independent from systems in the US. We have been for years in Europe trusting on our trade partner in the US as a free world, the little free world where data access was always available and so on. But we see that things are changing. Data storage and dealing with technology is becoming a geopolitical issue. And so the free world, the bloc of the EU, the European Union, is moving towards becoming independent from the clouds in the US.
Mr. Fadi, I want to bring you in here.
Dr. Ho's wise comment that let's not fool ourselves about what we can do and what we can't do is important. It's the fact. The digital space is not just fast, as he said, but I remind you, is very transnational. So yes, we may be able to move things to Europe or databases to Europe. We don't even know what data is. We're building on past knowledge. The technology is moving so fast that data, synthetic data, will be more important than even natural data. There will be more data created by AI than the data all humans have created in the last 30, 40 years in the next 6 months. So the digital space, as Dr. Ho noted very wisely, is just very, very fast and complex. And therefore, we need new governance methodologies, not old governance methodologies. And he did touch in the first part of his comment on multi-stakeholderism, meaning governance that is not just by governments, but by what he called the social compact that brings governments, businesses, as well as society together to make these decisions. But that's the context. The question that was asked is very specific, so I want to make sure I give my thoughts on that, which is how do we deal with the growing amount of data that is misinformation? And by the way, I'm sorry to alarm you, but if you thought we had a lot of bad or misinformation today, imagine now how much of that will be created by AI. Multiply that by millions of times, because it used to be that a person had to sit down and create false information and push it on an environment. Now we're going to have bots, AI bots, that on their own can create within a blink of a second massive amounts of misinformation. So this is a real question and a real issue, the person that brought this to the table. And so that I don't leave you very depressed about this, I'll just mention that the solution to a lot of this lies in the very technology that enabled misinformation in the first place. We just need technologists to have the will and maybe the request to comply with laws and rules, then make them use their very technology to track the source of information. Dr. Ho in his opening mentioning the Edelman Trust Barometer, and that same barometer he brought up to all of you has very good studies on how to track the provenance of data. And technology is able to do that. So while we cannot make sure every bit of information on the internet is good or correct, there are mechanisms to create spaces where the provenance of information is tracked by the very same technology, And you, as a user, are able to audit where this information comes from and then make up your mind as to whether this is information that you want to track. The problem today is we don't know where information is coming from. So I hope I touched just a little bit on the issue of misinformation, and it is a big issue, and it is a global issue, a transnational issue, and will require a lot of technology. But I am hopeful that with the right incentives, the technology companies that permeate a lot of that information will be either compelled or will have the goodwill to actually put in place these mechanisms.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fadi. A set of questions here also relate to fault lines. So, of course, fault lines are a big threat to social cohesion and multiculturalism. So, a question here kind of sums it up. What, in your view, what role does ideology, both political and religious, play in the emergence of new social fault lines? And this applies, of course, online, in the online space, as well as in the community. Are the fault lines essentially political, are they religious, or are they based on something else? So in your view, in your experience, what has been the role of ideology or religious issues, extremism? Perhaps, Mr. Aboutaleb?
In my experience, political ideology is one thing. We have in Europe a whole spectrum of ideologies, from the far right, believing in individual capacities, the liberalism. We have the Christian democracies somewhere in the middle. We have my type of ideology. I'm from the Labour Party, which is center-left. Then to the left, we have the Greens. So all these type of ideologies. But I can tell you one experience that I have, and that is despite ideologies, despite political schools, it matters who is running, who is taking the decisions. It really matters. If you make a choice for yourself to which political school I count myself, fine. But at the end, it depends on who is taking that decision. And if it is a believer in the multiculturalism and that we all have own 1 square meter space on this globe and that we deserve to collaborate together and that we are not here on this earth to kill each other, but we are here to make a beautiful environment to live in, to invest in a beautiful future, a sustainable future, which I believe myself. This is my starting point of dealing with politics. If you believe in that, that's another approach than somebody in politics who say, Peter, you know what your problem is? Your problem is Aboutaleb exists. If Aboutaleb would not exist, you will have a fine environment, less to share, all is for you. And that is a type of political exploitation of primitive feelings of people. Mm-hmm. Go back to the 50s. It was nice. No planes and nobody coming from other places. We spoke the same language, we had the same food. It's now becoming ugly. And all that is because Aboutaleb exists. So we tried to kick him out of the country. And then the environment will be safe. Less crime, less hate, and all the others. It makes a difference, and it's really makes sense who is dealing with political positions to take decisions. And I remember that I was member of the national government, Secretary for Social Affairs. Exactly the same day, I did nothing. I was just inaugurated. Even I was not entered the parliament, but the guy from one of the political parties to the right come up with a resolution in the parliament to withdraw the trust from me. That is the highest resolution you can do for a politician. And asked by the press, why are you doing that? He said, well, this guy was not born in the Netherlands. He can really not be Dutch. And the other arguments to the press, he said, well, this guy is a Muslim, and this is not a Muslim country. We don't like to have Muslims in the government. So this is the environment in which we have to deal with multiculturalism. And it was my duty to show to the nation that the other solution is better. That is, it's giving a better solution. It's giving us a better common ground to grow this country. Well, this politician who said we cannot have Muslims in the country, in the government, he forget that the Netherlands ever was the largest Muslim country in the world. Do you know that? A European country was the largest Muslim country in the world? The Netherlands. It was occupying Indonesia.
Oh, all right. I was wondering about that. Mr. Ho, would you like to-
I'll give a somewhat different perspective on this. In recent months, I've become quite addicted to TikTok. I find it extremely entertaining. But I also know that there's a dark side to TikTok because when you, I don't subscribe to anything, so it pushes things through some sophisticated algorithm depending on how long you look at things. So you'd not be surprised to know that I get a lot of feeds on hawker centers and good restaurants to go to. But on the other hand, it also feeds things like the MAGA-based stuff on Mr. Trump, as well as those who oppose. And I think for the unsophisticated viewer of TikTok, who doesn't necessarily look beyond TikTok and read widely, his view will be colored and conditioned by whichever feed is successful in holding his attention. And at the root of this is two things. One is the algorithm, how much we know about the algorithm and how it determines what is fed to us. And secondly, and I think this is a problem with the advent of the social media, I think fewer people read widely, and therefore their choices are very narrow. Their understanding of the world is very narrow, and they cannot make free and informed choices because they are channeled into certain points of view which are determined by the algorithms on their social media. So I think this is one of the dark sides of technology which we don't know how to grapple with, and it's connected to issues like, do the people trust the mainstream media? If they don't trust the mainstream media, they turn to the social media, and then they get trapped into this vicious cycle of ideologies which they can't get out of. So I think this is one of the issues, and it has a lot to do with, in each individual country, what the level of trust in the media is, how much willingness there is to have open and free discussions on sensitive topics between the people and the government. And I think these are important aspects of the problem, and they need a lot more considered discussion. Today, I think we tend to dismiss this side of things, but I think it's a very important area which I would be concerned with.
Thank you. Mr. Fadi, would like to weigh in here?
Yeah, not much to add other than to just accentuate what Dr. Ho just said. He mentioned how this narrowing he described, that's what I referred to earlier as hyper-personalization, which to date has been limited, say, in TikTok on what you look at. But soon, those digital platforms will be using artificial intelligence to watch a lot more than what you do on TikTok, to build a persona of Dr. Ho in their systems that then gets fed information from multiple places he visits on the internet based on this persona. That was not possible before AI. In other words, we didn't have the capacity to do this for every human on the planet. Today, artificial intelligence allows for that, and that narrowing or hyper-narrowing to a person is a concern that I mentioned earlier, that it will further even the separation of each person's digital exposure to things that the digital world decides you want to see, or they want you to see, so that maybe you can buy more things, or make different decisions, or follow certain ideologies. And then I'll just close my comment on this question by simply saying that, back to my analogy, or at least my imagery of an oasis versus a fortress, there are ideologies that are built on the idea of being a fortress, of saying Aboutaleb is not one of us. We want to create a fortress and protect what we have. And there are ideologies that are open, that believe that it is in their openness that they thrive and they grow and they become attractive. And that's the same whether it's in real life or in the digital life. So when I talk to my own students or my own children, I always caution them about following ideologies that thrive on being fortresses, on closing themselves off, because these are ideologies that usually do not have the depth to be able to stand on their own, even in an open environment.
Thank you very much. There's a very good question here, actually, which gives an opportunity to draw upon the practical experience of our colleagues on the panel. I'll just read it out. Can you share a framework for building trust with government institutions through the role of community partnerships? How does it look like? Specifically, how to maximize its opportunities and mitigate challenges. So how do you build this partnership? Perhaps, Mr. Aboutaleb?
Live in palaces and go into the streets. That's the only way to do that. And to talk to people and to search for common ground. That doesn't mean that you answer all the questions with yes. Sometimes no is also an answer. And to seek for differences in one city, it could be differences. One neighborhood can be the issue housing, the other one can be public order, the other neighborhood. And what people like is that the man or the woman in power gets to the level of the streets. So I organized 134 of these meetings. Time consuming. It takes at least 3 hours a night, an evening. It starts at 6 o'clock with the dinner, and we end at 10 o'clock. The police chief was with me, the chief prosecutor was with me, the director of social housing was with me, even public lighting. Sometimes public lighting can become an issue. So we went there. We collected the information about that neighborhood. We projected the information, crime, for instance, or other issues. And then we say to our citizens, tell me, did you recognize this picture? If it is not accordingly, tell us what is wrong. And if you want to change things, don't ask me only to do things. Yes, I'm the one with the budgets and the power to do things, but you have the quality of change in your own hands. What is your role in changing your own living circumstances? I think that is in the Bible stated that the situation of people never changes unless people would like to work on their own change. So my efforts as a government is to push things forward, but not always to be the one who initializes change. Change can be coming from the people in the neighborhoods. And I mean, that's the way I did it. And trust. It's a mutual thing. We see nowadays in the Netherlands that not the citizens are losing sometimes trust in the government. No, we see the reverse. We see that sometimes the government is losing trust in citizens. Well, that's new. When I came to the Netherlands in '76, I was surprised that I can apply for something on a paper and then sign it under the paper, and it says, everything you signed for is truth. It was fine. I was coming from a dictatorship. And then suddenly I communicate with a system that says, you trust me, and we trust that the information you give us is based on truth. Well, the truth is now becoming a very complicated thing. What is truth? If you walk in a park that way, you have a picture, and the day after you work the reverse direction, the same park, same path, you see different things. Did you observe that? You see completely different things. Just walking, it's the same path. So we have different objectives and different views. And I think trust is complicated, but we have to work on it to create your own definitions of mutual trust. To me, there was a big surprise the day that I said I'm going to quit from the office last year, October, that the number of people applied for a meet and greet was that tremendous. There was not space in the city to shake hands. All halls were too small. So we decided to organize a festival in a big park to give people the possibility to have a handshake. To me, that was a big signal of the way of trust and being really close to people. Not only the store mayor who has the police force to dictate things if riots in the city, that you have to do that, but also the man or the woman to bring people close to you and even maybe to cry here if necessary, to be a kind of a father for your citizens. And I think really you want to work on a cohesive approach, leave the palace, go to the neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Ho, would like to...
I just want to draw your attention to my concluding remarks just now. And that is, if I look at a state as a system, there are three components in the system. One is the government. The second part of that system is the people. And the third part of the system is the private sector. And we often tend to conflate government with the state, but actually we should be thinking of the whole system. And it's not about government, it's about governance.
Correct.
I define government as the organization of the public sector, but governance is the organization of the public sector, the private sector, and the people. And we don't pay enough attention to that part because it is in that triangular relationship that issues of trust are resolved, built up, or destroyed. And I think it is incumbent in a fast-changing, uncertain world where there are a lot of uncertainties that the governments have the humility to know that first, they don't have all the answers. Secondly, the problems are so complex that they have to work with others to get things done or to resolve the problems to reach some kind of societal consensus. And if you do this process right, I think trust is enhanced. If you ignore the fact that you are part of a much larger system, trust is destroyed or undermined. So I think it's very incumbent in terms of today's context of great uncertainty, rapid change, that governments learn better to work together with the society, with the private sector, to build that kind of societal consensus that can move the society forward. It may not necessarily produce the most optimal results, but then you can never produce optimal results in complex, fast-changing
Correct.
situations.
Thank you.
That's a generic kind of response to the question.
That's fine. So, Fadi, would you like to add anything here?
I just would like to convince Dr. Ho to leave TikTok and go back and lead government a little bit, because it is rare to hear such wisdom from someone who served with distinction, obviously, but really what you just said, Dr. Ho, is so wise, that governments need to work with the other stakeholders in their system to create modern, nimble, agile governance systems that respond to the changing world we're in. And governments that understood that, and by the way, I'm quite familiar with, during my time at ICANN, how the Singaporean government, for example, contributed and gave to the idea that Dr. Ho mentioned of multi-stakeholder governance. I'm very impressed by the work that they did at the time. But we need that kind of social compact, that together we bring better governance. This way, the private sector is not acting on its own with no checks and balances. The government sector is not imposing regulations that are not in tune with the digital world and culture that pervades us now. And frankly, society, civil society, and the people have their voice at the table. 3 ways. Even when I was advising the chairman of the World Economic Forum, I kept telling him that he kept saying it's private-public partnerships. I said, no, this is missing a leg for that stool. Private, public, and people. Civil society has to be at the table. And if they're excluded from Davos, then we're missing a very important voice. That is a very good, I think, framework. The person who sent the question said, is there a framework? That is the framework, and Dr. Ho described it better than I could. And frankly, Mr. Aboutaleb implemented it with distinction in Rotterdam. So this is the example we should look for when we ask about frameworks for collaboration between governments and society.
Thank you very much. We are coming to the end of the session, so I'd like to give our speakers an opportunity to deliver some closing remarks, give each about 30 seconds. As a framing question, I mean, we could summarize it as, what is the role of NGOs, faith leaders, and civil society in promoting multiculturalism, well, recognizing their limitation in terms of resources, influence, and capacity. Perhaps, Aboutaleb?
Well, I should say continue connecting and learn from each other, not only on the level of the concepts, but our practical doing. It's really important how we do things. And it can be different from place to place, city to city, country to country. Fadi said it has also something to do with culture. I think that's really important. And at the end, I would like to congratulate Singapore, first for being in the lead, and secondly for bringing all these people together to talk about that important issue. Even if there is, in Europe nowadays, a disbelief in the fact that multiculturalism is a fact and we have to invest in it, Singapore is continuing to say, no, for us, this is the way. We have to do it together. Neighborhoods, cities, nations, globally. Well, thank you, Singapore, for that.
Thank you. Mr. Ho?
I don't know how to summarize this sort of thing, but I would say it's very important that we recognize we are living in a world of change, and not just change that is rapid, but I think it's got a quality of acceleration, which makes things even more challenging. Acceleration as evidenced by, say, Moore's law. Moore's law is an acceleration. And I think we are living in this particular kind of world which imposes enormous challenges on not just governments but societies as a whole. And it means that any kind of wishful thinking that we can bring things back to the status quo ante is what it is, wishful thinking. Instead, we just have to prepare ourselves psychologically, but in terms of our policies, towards a world that is going to be different in the future. And if we do it properly, we can seize the opportunities. If we don't recognize these changes, we'll miss the opportunities and we could end up in a worse place.
Thank you. Final short comment from Mr. Fadi.
Yes, I just want to also second Mr. Aboutaleb's comment of just saying how Singapore is a true oasis of multiculturalism. And I hope you stay this way. You are a beacon in the world of multiculturalism as a society, as a country, as a city. Really, I hope this oasis continues to thrive as it has for many years and be an example of what we could all be around the world, given the divisions we're seeing. And I also want to just go back and quote either Dolly Parton, as His Highness said, or Aristotle, that the winds of change from the the hybrid world we're going to live in are unstoppable. Our job is to figure out how to adjust our sails, as he quoted, and how to really get ready for this, but also be positive about it. I think we should not leave this excellent session with a sense of gloom about the digital world, but rather that we can really adjust our sails and really fly through that wind that is coming. Or we can just keep our sails down and insist on the old ways, as Mr. Aboutaleb said, and then we'll be stuck. But there is a lot of opportunity for our young people, for our young graduates, to benefit from this space and to advance our lot together. And I hope we take advantage of these with good governance and remaining open as oasis, like Singapore is.
Thank you very much. Well, we have come to the end of our plenary session. I tried very hard to bring in as many questions as I could, but I hope you beg the audience indulgence because there's so many questions and speakers have so many good ideas. We wanted to give them time to share. But please join me in thanking our panel. It was an excellent panel and appreciate very much. So Fadi, thank you very much.